Welcome to the Creek Road Baptist Pulpit. These weekly podcasts feature expository messages delivered to edify the soul. Now let's join Pastor Dave as he presents this week's message. If you have your Bible, why don't you turn with me to Genesis chapter 39. I'm thinking about this being Graduate Sunday. I thought I'd have something for the graduates and maybe something for all of us as well. So we're going to go to the prison house and try to find some lessons from the prison house. Lessons in the prison house. This is Joseph's story. If you find chapter 39, you'll go down to verse 21. We'll read 21 through 23. I'm sorry, we'll begin at 20 through 23. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. The keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison. Whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. And the keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him. And that which he did, the Lord made it to prosper. Like I said, this is for the graduates, but also for all of us. There's lots of lessons here in Joseph's story. One of my favorite passages from the Bible here is in chapter 39 of Genesis. Joseph goes from Potiphar's house to the prison house. And in the prison house, we have several things. Number one, you'll notice that Joseph's master there in verse 20 took him, put him into prison. Now, we know why he was in prison. He was in prison for false charges, right? It was trumped up. Potiphar's wife charged him with rape. Of course, he never touched her. But Potiphar, being a jealous husband and wanting to appease his wife, puts the servant Joseph into prison. Joseph is there. And he's in place, it says in verse 20, where the king's prisoners were bound. And notice that last phrase there in verse 20. And he was there in the prison. So, there in the prison. It's not a good place to be, right? It's sort of like we've reached the end of the road. This is the bottom of the barrel. And literally, this is the bottom of the prison barrel. He's in the dungeon. You'll notice several times in this passage, and in passages that follow, it says he's inward. He is all the way in the bottom of the place. He is in the nastiest part of the prison. Now, verse 21. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. That first statement there, the Lord was with Joseph. That's kind of a bittersweet statement, isn't it? The Lord was with Joseph when he was in the pit, and his brothers are trying to decide whether or not he's going to live or die. He's with Joseph in the pit when his brothers are trading with the Ishmaelites the money for Joseph's life. The Lord is with Joseph when he's in the flee train of the Ishmaelites headed down to Egypt. The Lord is with Joseph when he's standing on the platform being sold as a slave. The Lord is with Joseph when Potiphar buys him. The Lord is with Joseph when he's in his house. The Lord is with Joseph during all the time of his service to Potiphar. And it tells us here that he's put in the king's prison, where the king's prisoners are bound, and was there in the prison, and the Lord was with Joseph. Or it says, but the Lord was with Joseph. See the contrast. So on one hand, it's dark. This is bad, because he goes from the pit in Israel all the way down to the pit in the prison in Egypt, so far from family, so far from dad and mom, so far from anything he ever thought his life might achieve. But there's light. The Lord's with him. I wondered if we watched Joseph walk into the prison house and they unshackled him and threw him into that hole and closed the grate behind him. If we looked at him and said, Joseph, the Lord's with you. I wonder if he wouldn't have reared up and punched us right in the nose. The other day, I was at home. It was an evening meal, and Denise had brought a cookie home from work, which is not an unusual event. Sometimes she brings sweet things home because she works for bakery supply company, so there's always something traveling through my kitchen, either for us or for other people that she gets from work. And she said, "Here, I want you to try a cookie." Well, now I am not opposed to trying a cookie. As a matter of fact, I am an all-purpose cookie tryer-outer. And when she said, "I want you to try a cookie," of course, my response was, "Okay." And she said, and she broke it apart in half, and she said, "It's got something inside." She didn't tell me what it was. She said, "It's got something inside." And I said, "Okay." And I couldn't see because the light in the kitchen was out. It wasn't out. I mean, it was turned off. And so I couldn't see what it was, but immediately my mind said chocolate. So I thought, this cookie has chocolate in it. And I'm all for a cookie with chocolate in it, especially if it's creamy and gooey. And so she handed me the cookie, and I took a bite of the cookie, and I went, "Huh," because I was expecting chocolate, but I got a bite of raspberry. Has that ever happened to you? When you think you're going to taste something, and then something else comes in? I was thinking chocolate and sweet and creamy and all of a sudden I get this tart raspberry blast in my mouth. Now, it was sweet, and it was good with the cookie that was around it, and didn't keep me from eating it. But I'm not opposed to raspberry either. I love raspberry jam, coulis, raspberry stuff's great. But when you're expecting chocolate and you bite into raspberry, I kind of did a shiver, because I was thinking and expecting one thing, and I guess my body was too, and that's why I had this physical reaction. I think if you or I were to have met Joseph and said to him, "The Lord is with you," he'd have gone, "What are you talking about, the Lord is with me? Do you know what has just happened to me? Do you know where I've come from?" Yeah, but the Lord was with him through all those things. And yet I don't really think that Joseph knew that the Lord was with him. And I don't think we do either. And I say this to the graduates, I say this to all of us. Remember the sovereignty of God. He watches over everything you do. Joseph is in prison, but guess who's with him in the prison? And guess who has him in the prison? You may be in a place that you don't quite like, but the Lord might have you there. And we'll see why as we go through this story. Next, you'll notice that it says that the Lord was with Joseph, and showed him mercy. Showed him mercy. Now, this word mercy is the word that we know this word. It's all over the Old Testament. It's the word for loving kindness. Tender loving kindness. That's what this word is. It's our word hesed. It means mercy. It means kindness. It means tender loving kindness. You can find it in all kinds of places. And this is what the Lord sheds abroad to his people. He gives them mercy. Can God give you mercy? Here's the question, though. Can God give you mercy in prison? Sure he can. Right? He can give you mercy wherever you are. But in prison, I wonder if Joseph knew that the Lord had showed him mercy. Now, let me just say something about this mercy. This mercy is extended to the covenant people. Joseph is the son of Jacob, who's the son of Isaac, who's the son of Abraham. So Joseph is in line for the covenant blessings. He's a member of the people of God, although the people of God at this point are very small. It's really a small family when you think about it. Now, they're going to get so big that they'll become a nation, but right now they're not that big. And so Joseph's a member of this small group that's in covenant with God. And so because he's a covenant member, God is going to show him mercy. And I will guarantee you something right now. He is the only one in that prison that is a member of the people of God. And you may be in a place where you are the only one. And you know what? Everybody in that place needs mercy. And you're a gift from God to them. So Joseph, when he walks into that prison, he doesn't want to be in that prison. None of us would want to be in that prison. He doesn't want to be inward. He doesn't want to be there. He's, okay, so the Lord's with me, so what? He's angry probably. He's upset. He's disappointed. His future is dead. As far as he knows, it's not. But he thinks it is. And yet the Lord shows him mercy because he can. And he wants everybody else in that place to experience the mercy of God. And you may be the only one in the place where you are that has the mercy of God. But do you know something? Even though you don't want to be there perhaps, those people that are around you need you to be there because God is showing you mercy. And you know what happens? That falls off onto other people. And we'll see that in this story as well. But not only did God show Joseph mercy, but it says here in that verse, in verse 21, he gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. Now this word favor, usually it's translated grace. It's also translated favor, lots of places. This is a common word, but it's always, this word always comes in when we're talking about God's mercy. God's mercy and grace, usually in the Old Testament, go together in some form. And so here we have the idea of mercy that God, generally speaking, is going to be merciful to Joseph, and that's going to fall out to the other people that are there in that prison, but also specifically, notice this. Now, we have kind of a funnel idea here. We have, mercy in the big round part of the funnel, but now we come down specifically that mercy is going to be demonstrated to Joseph through the favor, the grace that God gives him in the sight of the keeper of the prison. Now, we don't exactly know what all that means as far as how that actually worked out day to day for Joseph, right? I mean, we don't really. Did they put him in a better cell? Did they put him in a dry cell? Did they put him in a cell that was away from the latrine? That didn't smell as bad? Did they put him in a warmer spot or a cooler spot? Was it a little more comfortable there? We're not exactly sure what all was happening as far as God's mercy being demonstrated this man is concerned, but we know that God gave him favor, gave him mercy first, and then grace in the sight of the keeper of the prison. It fits in with the mercy theme, but it really goes so much further than that. This grace extends to Joseph in such a way as the attitude of the keeper of the prison. The Hebrew word here is the prince of the prison. I doubt anybody would want to be called that, but that's the idea. He's an official. He's over. He's the leader of. He's the official government director of the prison. We would probably call him a director or something. God's hand, his sovereign work in Joseph's life, leads him to prison. Where is God's sovereign hand going to lead you? Well, don't be surprised if it leads you to prison or someplace you don't want to be, because in that place, no matter where you are, you could just remember this, that God's with you, his mercy is extended to you, and his favor is influencing people around you. God is at work in the life of Joseph. And it's just not Joseph. We want to stylize Joseph as some kind of hero of the faith, but ladies and gentlemen, this is a man who is without the Holy Ghost. I mean, he's not born again. He's not a Christian in that sense. He's not walking with the Lord like we walk with the Lord. He doesn't have the presence of the Spirit of God like we have the presence of the Spirit of God. So when you read about Joseph, you can just be assured that this same thing is happening in your life as a believer 100-fold more. So he's in the prison. Now let's look at this keeper. Verse 22. The keeper, or the prince, or the leader, the director, whatever you want to call this guy, of the prison, committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison. The keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison, and whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. Notice that the keeper of the prison committed, that is, he gave to, or he placed into Joseph's hand all the prisoners. First thing that we need to know here, everybody has a boss. Are we agreed on that? I don't care if you're sitting in a C-suite and you're CEO of something. You still have a board. You have somebody that's watching you. Everybody has a boss. And if we have a boss, then don't we want to find grace in the sight of that boss? Don't we want to do our best for him or her? Sure we do. And so here Joseph has this fellow that's over him. He doesn't want to be there. And I'm sure this boss doesn't want to be there. To be the prince of the prison is probably not, an upwardly mobile position within Egypt. But he's there, and Joseph's there, and he sees Joseph, and God gives him grace in the sight of this keeper of the prison. And so he puts into Joseph's hand all the prisoners. So Joseph is given a job. All the prisoners he gives to Joseph. And then notice, and by the way, that's very much like what happened in verse 4 of this chapter when he's at Potiphar's house. Potiphar placed into his hand his whole estate. Gave it to Joseph. Said, here, you do it. You run it. Joseph had a job, even in prison. And, verse 23, the keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand. And that's also like verse 6 in this chapter 39. Joseph in Potiphar's house. Potiphar gave him everything, and he didn't look to any of it. He trusted him completely. Joseph's actions, his attitude, his work ethic, everything, guess what it did? It produced trust. So now suddenly, along with the mercy that God had given him and the favor that God had given him with the keeper of the prison, Joseph is doing stuff. And is he doing it out of anger? Is he doing it grudgingly? Or is he doing it willingly? I think he's doing it willingly. I think Joseph is doing his very best. Get this irony. He's doing his very best for the man who has him in chains. That's what he's doing. Of course, he did his very best for the man that bought him as a slave. And now that man put him in prison, and he's doing his very best for the man who keeps him in prison. If that is not the attitude of a believer, I don't know what is. He's not griping. He's not sniping. He's not cutting back on his work. He's not doing less than. He's not doing half of. He's doing everything because all the prisoners have been committed to him. And so Joseph continues to produce trust. And you know what else he's producing? Along with the favor that God gave him with the keeper of the prison, Joseph is producing favor because the keeper of the prison sees how this man's working. And so he is doing for his boss. Ladies and gentlemen, whether we are going out into the workforce just like these graduates or whether we're already there, this is how we're to live. This is how we're to work. We're to do our very best with singleness of heart, serving others and serving the Lord. Now, we've already kind of started down this road. Let's just look at Joseph's work for a second. It says that all the prisoners that were in the prison, he had in his hand, and that whatsoever they did there in verse 23, he was the doer of it. What exactly is the scope of Joseph's work in a prison? So everything it says, it doesn't matter what it is, whatsoever they did there. I can imagine a lot of dirty jobs in a dungeon. I can imagine a lot of disgusting jobs in a dungeon. Not only that, minus the disgusting part, he had to take care of feeding the prisoners. I'm sure that was part of it. He had to make sure that they were clean and healthy. He had to make sure that the cells were in good shape. I'm sure that there was something that he had to do as far as accounting of the prisoners and what they were doing and how they were doing and how much they were eating and how many were in there and how many more they could take or not take. Joseph's is kind of oversee the entirety of this operation called the prison. So all of the work he's doing. You see, every task has its parameters. I don't know where you work. Well, I know where some of you work, but I don't know all the parameters in that thing. And you and I could sit down and you could tell me everything that goes on and everything you have to do and all the I's you have to dot and all the T's you have to cross, all the paperwork that has to be done. You can tell me about all the people skills you have to have, all the ways that it has to happen within your organization. So every task has its parameters. But ladies and gentlemen, within the boundary of your work, you can always look for the presence, mercy, and grace of God. No matter where you are, no matter what you do. I used to preach this to my boys when they were in school, that when you're in school, your job is your studies. Your teacher, your professor, whoever it is, that's your boss. And you need to do exactly as they say. You need to understand the parameters within which you have to work, and you need to know all the expectations and meet them so that you honor your boss or your teacher, professor. They used to get sick of hearing me say that. But it's true in school, it's true in work life, it's true everywhere. Yes, God has you there. And if God has you there, then you need to do your best. And it doesn't matter what it is that you have to do, because you can always look. If God has you there, you can always look for presence, mercy, and grace. Doesn't matter what the job requires. Doesn't matter what you have to do. Always look for that and expect Him to show you mercy and favor and be with you in all of it. And so they give to Joseph all the prisoners in the prison. And whatever was done there, he did it. But I want to ask you a question real quick. Who's getting credit for all this work that Joseph is doing? It's not Joseph. It's the prince of the prison. And I'm sure that he's turning in his reports without Joseph's name on it. And I'm certain that everybody is looking at the prince of the prisons and saying, hey, you know what? He would be good for this job we got over here in, R&D. Or he'd be good for that job over there. He could be the prince of the education system. He could be the prince over such and such. Because he's turning all this work, and everybody's saying, wow, that's good stuff. And the only person that knows the difference is the prince of the prisons, and Joseph, and the prisoners, and God. That's it. Nobody outside that prison knows. So let me ask you another question. Are you doing it to get applause and to climb the ladder? Or are you doing it to serve the Lord and to show mercy to the people around you? Because remember, the Lord was with him in the prison, and He showed him mercy. And I said he's the only one in that prison that the Lord is showing mercy to. But what's happening? All of a sudden, He's over all the prisoners. So guess what? That mercy now is affecting every single prisoner in that place. And you know what? There's probably a bunch of prisoners in that place that deserve to be there, but they still need mercy. And Joseph is showing it to them. So the one person who has mercy is showing mercy, and he's the one taking care of the place, and it's starting to prosper. It's starting to look like a real live prison. It's running efficiently. All the prisoners are happy. They're healthy. I don't know how happy they might be, but, what's your work? Why are you working? Are you working just to feed your family? That's good. That's a good reason. But are you working also to please the Lord and to please and honor your boss? That needs to be part of it. Because you know what's going to happen later on? Later on, Joseph is going to become the prince of the country. He's going to be second only to Pharaoh. And the man who has mercy in the prison is going to be the man who has mercy in the entire country. And that mercy is going to spill off onto a whole country. And not just a country, but an entire region that is under famine. And God's hand is going to be seen in the work of Joseph. But Joseph doesn't get to be prince of Egypt until he's prince of the prison house. And if you're faithful in little things, ladies and gentlemen, God will reward you with bigger things. But even in the bigger thing, you better be faithful in that too. Because the person that really gets the credit for all of this, it's not Joseph, it's not the prince of the prison, it's not Pharaoh, it's not Potiphar, it's none of those people. The one who gets the credit for everything that Joseph does is God Himself. Because God's the one that was with him, God's the one that showed him mercy, and God's the one that gave him grace. You need to walk into wherever you go next, whether it's to school, whether it's to work, whether it's to the military, and expect God to be with you, give you mercy, and show you grace. And do your very best to honor those who are over you, simply because that is your commission from the Spirit of God. You will not be demonstrating grace, mercy, or anything else. Certainly not God's presence if you're after advancement just for advancement's sake. Verse 4 in chapter 40, the next chapter over, gives us a little bit more about Joseph's work. It says then in verse 4, this is when the butler and the baker come to prison. It says, the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them, and they continued a season inward. Now, notice that in verse 4, the captain of the guard. You know who that is? Potiphar. That's Potiphar. Potiphar's the captain of the guard. So Potiphar shows up at the prison house, and the keeper of the prison says, oh, Joseph's in charge. And I wonder what Potiphar thought when he handed those two boys off to Joseph. Joseph standing there, probably with his eyes looking down at Potiphar's shoes. Didn't want to look at him. Potiphar comes in and hands these off. And it says he charged Joseph with them. And it says he served them. Wait a minute, I thought he was over all the prisoners. How come he's serving them? Because that's what we do. That is the Christian impulse in work. We serve. We're not serving other people, really. We're really serving the Lord, but we're doing it as we serve other people. And he served them. What a lowly position that is. What willingness to help the less fortunate. And these guys are less fortunate. They don't have mercy. They've not been given grace. God is not with them. They're in the prison, and their necks are on the block. They don't know which one's going to go. And who's doing the work here? Joseph, and he's serving them. Humbly working as they continued there for whatever season it was. We're not told how long the season is, but they're all there in the dungeon with Joseph. And what's the outcome? Well, if you look at verse 23, it says, the keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand because, here's our outcome, the Lord was with him, just as we started this off. And that which he did, the Lord made it to prosper. This is just like what we find in verses 2 and 3 in chapter 39, just a few verses ahead where we started this chapter. In Potiphar's house, he was a prosperous man. He caused everything in Potiphar's house to prosper. He goes to prison, and he's a prosperous man, and everything is caused to prosper. Why? Because the Lord's with Joseph. And that which he did, notice the D-I-D there. That's important. The D-I-D is not he wanted to do, he thought about doing, he wished he could do, if he only had the ability to do more, if he could be somewhere else and do something else in all of his dreams, he wished he could be out of that house. No, he didn't look outside, he looked inside, and he saw people that needed to be served. And so Joseph did that. He did. D-I-D, very powerful English word. He did. Joseph did. He didn't gripe about it. He didn't fuss about it. He didn't snipe about it. He just did it. He served these men, all the prisoners. He's one of them. And who do you want running the prison house? Do you want somebody else outside who goes home to a mansion? Or do you want somebody inside who knows what it's like, who can help you with the problems that you have on site? Yeah, that's the kind of man you want. That's what Joseph was. And the Lord made it to prosper. I don't think we would have verse 23 if Joseph's work ethic was anything less than willing and humble. I don't think we would have it. Because if Joseph was biting against the leash the whole time, it would be very difficult for any of this to have taken place. But he wasn't. He accepted the sovereignty of God on his behalf, even though it was bitter to him. He accepted it. He took the mercy and he took the grace, and he did his level best to make that prince of the prison look like a champion with no credit for himself. That's good stuff. And all that he did, the Lord made it to prosper. So there's our outcome. Ladies and gentlemen, that outcome is still available today. And then finally, I just wanted to go over just a couple of things about Joseph's patience, because sometimes that's our biggest hurdle, is our patience. We know that we're in a place that we don't want to be. We know that God's hand is over all things and he's kept us there. We know that he is in charge of all of this work. And sometimes it's hard to be patient and wait for the next thing to happen, for the next prison door to open and me walk out. And we know that Joseph's impatient. If you just look there in chapter 40, when the butler and the baker get there, the butler tells Joseph his dream, and Joseph says, okay, but now once you get out of here, now you're going to tell somebody that I'm in here and I was wrongly accused. I mean, Joseph he's right on that. You know, I shouldn't be here. So we understand Joseph's impatience. But notice his patience. We can't forget that Joseph is still just a prisoner. So he's patiently waiting, because in verse 3 of chapter 40 it says, he put them inward in the house of the captain of the guard into the prison where Joseph was bound. Joseph is still a prisoner, even though all of this good stuff is happening in the prison. Be patient. God will move soon enough. Verse 1 of chapter 41, it tells us that after the story of the butler and the baker, it says it came to pass at the end of 2 full years. So after the butler is restored to his position 2 years later, and we don't know what happened to those 2 years. All we know is Joseph's still serving the keeper of the prison. He's still got under his hand all the prisoners that are in the prison. We still know that during that time, whatsoever was done in the prison, Joseph was the doer of it. 2 years. And we don't know how many years before. Could have been 2, 4, 6, 11. Don't know. But he's there, and the whole time, no matter what, Joseph is faithfully serving, building trust, and acting on the mercy and the grace that God had given him. Folks, we need a Joseph kind of patience. Just to do, just to serve, to be where you are. That's like the old preacher once said, bloom where you're planted. That's good advice. And if the Lord decides to keep you there, then keep you there. And just keep blooming. There are no true prison houses when the Lord is with the prisoner. And the end of the story. How does the story end for Joseph? The story ends for Joseph in a manner that we could never have imagined, or at least perhaps maybe Joseph could never have imagined. We can imagine it because we've read it. But think of this. He's in the prison. And if I were to come to him and say, Joseph, this isn't the end of the story for you, he would have said, whatever. I'm just doing what I can do. I'm just being what I can be. I can't see the future, so I'm not even going to try to predict the future. I don't know what the future is going to hold. But guess what happens? Joseph comes out of the prison, shaves, puts on new clothes, and one day stands before Pharaoh. Goes from prisoners to Pharaoh in one day. Interprets Pharaoh's dream. In that very day, Pharaoh makes him second in the country, puts the ring on his finger, puts the robes on his back, puts him in the second chariot, and drives him through Egypt's streets, blowing a trumpet before him, telling everybody to bow the knee before number 2. In one day, he goes from the prison house to the golden chariot. Never would anybody have believed that. He oversees all of the capture of the grain. 5% of all that grain, he's capturing it year by year. He marries. He has children. How could he have ever imagined that he'd had a family? Then his father sends his brothers down, and he confronts his brothers, and they fall in love again, and they all come down to Egypt, and then he gets to see his dad again, and he gets to kiss his dad, and he gets to take his dad in before Pharaoh. How could he have ever imagined that happening? Not in his wildest dreams. He gets to bury his dad and kiss him on his deathbed and take him home and put him in his grave beside his mom. How could he have ever imagined that ever happening? He couldn't. And he goes back to Egypt and lives out a long, full life with his brethren as they continue to prosper and grow and grow and grow. Oh, the end of the story? Don't tell me you're at the end of your story. You're not at the end of your story. You can't even dream about what God is going to do for you. If you're in covenant with Him, if you are in Christ, ladies and gentlemen, you can expect presence, mercy, and grace no matter where you are. I exhort you today in Jesus' name, live like that. Live like you're in covenant with God. Be a man or a woman of prosperity. Work hard, serve others, live for the Lord, walk according to His way, and God will give you an end that you will not even be able to imagine. It's going to happen for you.
Jesus will meet you.
Thanks for listening to this week's message. Please join us again next time for another installment of the Creek Road Baptist Pulpit.